Do you have a strong-willed child and sometimes at a loss on how to handle this child? Have you ever wondered, why can't this child be more like my other children, easy and obedient?
Would you like to learn some techniques and ideas to make your job easier as a parent? Today, we're going to help you become a more effective parent to your strong-willed child and give you some practical tips and techniques. So stay with us and get those tips and techniques today. Before we get into the tips and techniques, let's talk about what is a strong-willed child. Well, a strong-willed child is one that's very strong-willed and does not like to be told what to do. And number two, they tend to want to learn things on their own, or they would be called what we say is experiential learners. They learn from going through the experience and not simply hearing about it.
They're hard. It's like they want to take the hard road.
Yeah. Number three, a strong-willed child will test the limits. So you need to be prepared.
Every limit.
Every limit.
Every limit. Every food you want to put in their mouth, every toy you want them to play with, every TV show, every decision of bedtime, mealtime, they're going to test you.
Yeah. And they want to be in charge of themselves, and they want to be right above all else.
Yes, they want to be right.
And then they're often characterized as stubborn and argumentative. What is interesting about strong-willed child is that these often turn out to be the leaders.
Yeah, because they're stubborn and argumentative, and they want to be right. They hold tight. I think of politicians, God help us. Listening is not one of their skills, unfortunately. We have to incorporate listening skills
as part of it, yeah.
As part of their lesson as a strong-willed child.
Yeah. So we're going to give you some general strategies, and after that, we're going to get more specific about strategies that you can do in dealing with your strong-willed child. Look, if this is a struggle with you, listen, it can become easier for you if you integrate some of these strategies. All children are high intensive.
Yeah.
But this can be really exhausting. We feel for you.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about the strong-willed child. You want to claim them as a warrior, re-communicating how they are. What's the golden gift for the strong-willed child? Because it's like they're strong-willed, they're stubborn, they're argumentative, they always have to be right. It's like these come across as very negative things.
So they're tenacious.
They're tenacious.
They're courageous.
Very courageous.
They're persistent.
Persistent.
Yeah.
They're warriors.
They're warriors. They're fighters.
They're fighters. So we want to translate those things when we're communicating about them.
And to them.
And to them. It's important.
Yeah, and that ties into the first general strategy, is that as a parent, the image that I want you to see is that you need to imagine that you're steering a large ocean liner ship and you're not trying to stop a train.
Exactly.
Right? Your job is to shift them. If they need to go from the United States as an ocean liner to Europe,
right.
If they get off course, you just have to steer them a little bit, but you don't tell them to stop and turn it around because they're not.
They're not.
You don't imagine them as a train that's coming down the track and you stand on the track with your hand up and say, stop.
Oh, no, they're going to bowl you over. Well, and that's a good image. And the other thing about that is that you are the tugboat that's pushing them. You're definitely not the captain.
Well, yeah, that's good.
You think you're the captain of the ship that they're steering, and they're like second mate. Oh, no. This child is the captain. He is everything on the boat, and you are the tugboat that's like pushing the thing, okay?
Yeah.
So just remember, I understand you're the parent, but if you get that in your mind, then it's exactly what you said. You're not the captain saying, stop the ship. Oh, no. The ship is not going to stop, and you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah. Another number two general strategy is within proper limits, let them learn and fail on their own. What I mean by proper limits is, of course, as parents, you need to make sure that they're safe, they're not in dangerous situations. And if they want to, walk on the end of a 4-story building, you're going to stop them from getting close, right? So there's certain limits that are non-negotiable.
Right.
But within proper limits,
Right.
Let them learn and let them fail on their own instead of telling them what to do.
Right. Or rescuing them. Because if you rescue them, they're going to continue to do it
Yes.
until they get the lesson. Unfortunately, a strong-willed child is going to have to learn from their own experience of wisdom.
Yes.
True wisdom is learning from someone else's experience. I mean, that's like the higher level of wisdom. So if you have a child that, sees their sibling talking back to their parents and they lose their privileges, the high wisdom says, that doesn't really work well, so I'm not going to do it. The strong-willed child does it anyway. If the strong-willed child's under that one, he does it anyway. He has to experience it for himself to see if these rules still apply to me.
Yes. Number 3, put some chips in the pot so that you can withdraw them when it's time to withdraw them. In other words, if you invest a lot of time and energy in the relationship,
Right.
when it's time to withdraw from the relationship, there's often a lot higher level of compliance. And we'll get into that as a specific strategy of what to do. Number 4, you want to have a general attitude of being firm and compassionate. If you're just firm without compassion, then you become a drill sergeant.
Well, this child is not trying to be this way. It's not like they're thinking it up at night. Oh, I'm just going to aggravate my parents all day and say no, 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 and do what I want. No, they are just built this way for a purpose on this earth. And they're needed in this world. Like, they're very important. Because if you had everybody that just was obedient and you didn't have anybody that pushed the limits or that, we would have problems, okay? Because these people are leaders.
Yeah. And so the first part is firm and
Yes.
then compassionate. And you can't just be compassionate and
No.
not be firm because you're going to be
Bulldog.
run over.
Yeah.
Look, what we've learned and what we've seen over and over again is that limits actually create safety for children.
Yeah.
When children don't have limits, it actually creates unsafety and anxiety.
Yes.
If you don't hold your responsibility in being firm about the limits that you need to set and carry those out, even though they will buck against it, right?
Yeah.
It's a tremendous disservice to them. You're really good at that in terms of maintaining firm limits, but doing it in a good way, a compassionate way.
Yeah. And you can't get into the thing, well, my kid doesn't like me. Well, that has nothing to do with this. Your boss may not like you either, but you still got to work. And you may not like your boss. Love is always there because you're their parent and they adore you. However, friends is not the gig here. You have to tell them what are the limits. And sometimes you don't know that you need a limit in that area because you're not aware that they're going to do that. So then you have to put the limit on there and then you have to confirm it with them. And in that, being compassionate is like, I'm really sorry that this is happening. However, this is the way it's got to be.
Yeah. Once you set the limit, then the limit becomes the bad guy and you become compassionate in following out, but you
Yeah.
point to the limit as the
Right.
thing that they can buck against, right? And
Yeah.
not you, in a
And
sense.
they're going to buck it because they need to see if you can hold a line. That's the test. The test is not if they can hold the line or not. They want to see if you can hold the line.
The test is for the parent as
Oh,
opposed
yes.
to for the child.
Yes, definitely. And they're going to see how far they can push you. And I mean, you may have to have a buddy, a girlfriend, a friend, a male friend, whatever, like a couple friends that have another strong-willed child, and y'all like have a little group, and little codes.
Give me
like,
strength.
Give me strength. Give me strength. Can you put
Help me, Jesus.
Yeah, something where you have a little support group
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah. There's also number 5 is a general strategy. When you're frustrated, which, as you know, you're going to get frustrated
Yeah.
and angry, you got to give yourself time to move from the old brain to the new brain.
You have to explain that.
What I mean is that there's part of our brain is our original brain that was evolved. It was the caveman brain, which is the fight or flight. And we get into the fight or flight, and that's what I'm doing. I'm either fighting you or flying. There's no in between. My rational part of my brain is shut down, and I'm just wild. And that can happen anytime in a relationship,
Yep.
in an argument. It can happen with parenting, where we really get triggered and we get overwhelmed emotionally. That's basically
Yeah.
the old brain. The new brain is the part of our brain that thinks through things properly. And so, whenever we're in a heated interaction with our child, oftentimes or sometimes we kick into the old brain, and so do they, and it becomes a match of
A
fighting
war.
and flighting, and it just goes on and on and on. So, one of the general strategies is you need to know what to do to go from your own brain that's being emotionally overwhelmed with frustration and anger to the part of the brain that can think through it. And so that may take some time. That may take 15, 20 minutes to cool off. It might take a hot bath. It might take a walk. It might take something. You need to know what that is. And so when you're parenting, if it's not a totally unsafe situation, you can say, I'm really unhappy with this,
Right.
and I'll talk to you about it in a little while. I'll talk to you about it after dinner. I'll talk to you about it this evening before snack.
Right.
Give yourself time to cool down, think through the situation, come up with something that really works for the child, and then go back and interact. Oftentimes parents say, I need to address it right now in this spot while I'm all worked up, and we often do things that we regret later. So as a general guideline, give yourself time to go from the old brain to the new brain before you address big issues.
Yes, definitely.
All right, let's get into some of the specific strategies. Those are the general ones, but here's some specific strategies for the strong-willed child. Give your child choices that are both acceptable to you. For example, they need to put on their socks and they're resisting you. Well, you say, would you like to wear the red ones or you can wear the green ones? If those are both acceptable to you, give them a choice. And then when they get to make a choice, it feels like they have the power in the situation.
Right.
Or, would you like to pick up your toys now or pick them up after the TV show?
Right.
They get a choice as opposed to pick up your toys now. Well, then that's the command. They don't have choice. They don't feel like they have a free will in this, and you often get resistance. Sometimes or oftentimes, when you give them choices that are both acceptable to you, they will comply with that.
Yes.
Number 2, be firm on the big rules, but be flexible on the small rules. For example, no playing by the street because it's dangerous. That's a big rule. It's inflexible. There's a danger there. But a small rule, they need to take a bath. Well, it could be, would you like to take a bath before homework or after homework? Your agenda is to get them to take a bath. Do they have to do it right now? Well, maybe that's a small rule that you can have flexibility with.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And, one of the things, too, about this type of child is that if you get them to agree prior to, you got it in the bank. Because there
Give us an example.
Sure. Like the small rule. Let's say that becomes a battle when they're bathing. Okay. Every day. So every day they get to pick before dinner, after dinner, before homework, after homework. That becomes the communication flow, because in their mind they may have that they have to do this and this and this before they bathe, which they're not saying to you, but in their own little mind.
In their mind.
Right. So in that, instead of them fighting you, in that you start to say, okay, what are you going to choose today? And they have a choice. Once they feel that they have made the commitment to you, then there's no coming back. Like with Moses, our son, which I used to say, like if he's changing the rule, like he wants to stay up late, and I would say, okay, however, I agree as long as there's no complaining in the morning about getting up and getting ready for school. And once he would agree to that, he'd say, okay, Mom, I'm going to watch this show and then I'm going to go to bed. Then what would happen is in the morning when it was time for him to get up, there was no complaining because it was his word. He agreed.
Yeah, that's good. Oftentimes when you ask questions like that, you give them choices, it stimulates the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain, and actually gets them out of the other part of the brain.
Right.
So that's a very important technique, is to ask them questions, give them choices, and it allows them to think through it, but that's the part that you want them processing in the interaction. So let's look at specific strategy number 3. When their behavior crosses a line that's unacceptable, give them a clear consequence.
Right.
And then stay firm and compassionate in the enforcement. You want to intensively parent the younger when consequences are smaller to avoid the bigger.
Yes.
Like, for example, if they're in 3rd or 4th grade and they're disrespectful to one of their friends and their friend, pushes them down and rubs their face in the mud a little bit, well, they come home with a little bit of mud in their face, and you have to address the disrespect issue. If you don't address it then, they can be 20 years old and disrespectful to someone at a bar, and that person can shoot them.
Right.
And they're dead. Right?
That's right.
So we want to parent and be intensively parent them when they're younger.
Right.
And for them to get those lessons then when the consequences are smaller.
Right.
Than when they're older and they haven't had that. So make sure when they're crossing the line, you're firm and you're compassionate and you enforce it.
Yeah, you have to enforce it. I always tell Moses, you're going to prison now in my house because it's a lot easier than going to prison in the big house. Because you have your own bed, you get to eat your mama's food. People here in this house love you and only want the best for you,
and
know.
You get out of jail quicker than when you was in prison.
Yeah, and he would laugh. But, it was the price, he had to pay to learn the lessons.
Yeah.
And then he always had to explain to me what's the lessons. But it's very true that the consequence needs to match the crime.
The crime.
Yeah.
And the desired behavior, which is a whole nother show that we can do.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do that.
So number 4, the specific strategy is spend 10 to 15 minutes a day doing, viewing, or participating in your child's agenda or activity.
Exactly. You want to get to know them.
Yeah, so I'll sit down and just watch him play Xbox, talk to him some, ask him what's the strategies in the game. There's this, or he's throwing baseball with his friend. I go out and throw baseball with them for 10 to 15 minutes. Look, do 10 to 15 minutes of activity on their agenda, and it's like putting, as we said before, you're putting deposits in the bank.
Yeah.
So when it's time to take out and withdraw, you have something in there.
You have something in there. They respect you.
Yes.
Because you know them.
Yes.
You need to know them. You need to know what's their favorite color when we're starting little. Well, who's their best friend? What animal they like better than the other. Why they like dance, whatever it is. And as they grow, you grow with asking who they are and what's important to them.
Yeah. You've done a good job at that, honey.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then number 5, specific strategy. And this relates to the old brain, new brain kind of thing that we talked about. Buy time to cool off when you're frustrated or angry, and delay in addressing the issue to later if it can be delayed, so that you'll have much more of a thought through consequence and you'll be doing it from a lot different place.
Yeah, definitely. And, if you ever get stumped, you can always ask them, what do you think you deserve? And I'll be back. And then that way, that gives you time to cool off. And that gives them time to start thinking about, oh my God.
That's an interesting thing you've done over the years that we've done, is to ask them, what does he think the consequence should be? And it was always a lot harder than what we would have ever given.
Way harder.
I remember we had taken the phone away from him one time.
Yeah, well, he had just gotten the phone. He had it 2 weeks, and he was 12.
Yeah, and there was some issues with the phone. So we had taken away the phone.
Yep.
And, we were waiting, and we said, well, let's just wait till he asks for it back. Mm-hmm. Before we'd give it back to him. And it was, like a year and a half?
Oh, no, it was, 18 months.
18 months he didn't ask for it back.
Now, we did have a rule set in place at the time that if I gave you a consequence and you bugged me on it, the consequence started all over again. So, if you had a timeout and you started saying, Mom, how long has it been? Then it started from the beginning again. So, it would be 10 minutes, 30 minits, whatever it was. So, with the phone, we took it and we didn't put a time limit on it. He never asked for it until 18 months.
So he did get it back. But
yeah, no, he didn't even get that one back. At 18 months, we ended up getting him another one because that one was so out of date.
Really, have your child participate in the whole process of their consequence, and that actually seems to help a lot.
Yeah.
But, the strong-willed child is a challenge.
Yeah.
And implement these strategies, the general ones, the specific ones, you will see a difference, and things will improve. We also have a recommended resource for you. There's this book called Parenting with Love and Logic. We have a link for this book in the description below. It's by Foster Klein and Jim Fay. Excellent book on breaking down parenting strategies, very practical, a great concept. So get that book, and I think it'll be a deeper dive into what we've introduced you to, and you'll really find that beneficial. Finally, we also did a teaching on parenting ADHD, which is its own animal in itself. And we put in that teaching one technique that changed everything. It's a technique, a parenting technique I know you'll find helpful. So if you're interested in that, click on this video now and we will
See you in the next video.